and welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of Only Dan's. This one's a little bit different. When I'm in my refuge top, that's because I'm just about to go for a run after this. It's getting a bit cold, it's October, so but the marathons will be in April, so better get used to this slightly cold weather for and climatise to it and get comfortable. Obviously, as it gets more and more colder in December, I probably will wear a longer top. But yeah, I'm proud of this top. I love it. It's just a reminder of the fundraising that this and episodes like this and the running is all for. And with that in mind, when you're running, you can sometimes, or fundraising for running events, you can maybe give away more information than you'd intended to. And this is what this episode's for, is to kind of highlight ways where people may find out things that you may not necessarily be aware of, or you might actually be aware of, and you're wanting to kind of maybe reduce that impact. Is this a massive problem? Well, 7.8% of people over the age of 16, so it's around 3.8 million people across England and Wales, have experienced domestic abuse in the past year, and 8.6%, so 4.2 million people in England and Wales, have experienced some form of harassment. I think that's enough to warrant sharing some information about this, so people can choose to stay safe. I think what I want to make really clear is that actually the ultimate goal for this is that people don't harass people. People don't stalk people. People don't abuse people. Unfortunately, we don't live in that world where people choose that they can't harass people. Therefore, these are steps to help prevent that, if you want to take them. I would just rather people would just stop it. Where does this kind of come from? I guess for me, I've always had to think in this mindset. So when I was 17, I had a very horrible experience where, due to the colour of my skin, 4 men decided to jump out of a van and grab me and basically tell me that they were going to set light to me if they got me into that van. And luckily, I was incredibly fit. I used to box then, and I fought my way out of it, and ran as soon as I could. It wasn't I didn't. I only fought to break free and run for my life. So I think ever since then, I've had a bit of a understanding of what some women go through when they're harassed, and that kind of wakes me up at night when you have what's going around the UK at the moment. That scares me. And because of that, then you want to heighten your security. So hopefully these tips will help with that. Okay, so thanks for sticking with us. I guess what we're going to show is essentially how this is done. So I think the first awareness of this globally was November 2017. People using Strava, it's very successful. I use it myself. And they found that a base in the US was, a US Army base was essentially discovered through a Strava heat map that had been, it was a top secret base. And just from people running and recording their sessions and sharing that publicly, it found that this base got found out, basically. Quite embarrassing for everybody involved. And I think then steps were taken to basically increase some privacy into Strava. I think personally that they do some great work now. I think for me, what I've done here is to highlight the different things. Is I've got my own user, DanCon, and then I've got another user called DanCon with another N, which is a free user that follows my user, and the point of that is to kind of highlight what you can see. What I would really recommend is anybody doing this, if you use technology, it will be flawed at some point, right? So anything you share might become public at some point. You don't know who might own that social media company, and they might not have the same principles as the people that currently run it. So do have an awareness of what you share online, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because the trust you put into people might not be the same throughout the whole time period of that organization. And certainly if you leave, delete your account, or delete the contents of the account and just leave the account dormant. So that way, then, if somebody else has come in, that they don't choose to use your content in a way that you didn't consider. So, getting back to Strava, what Strava has now, which I quite like, is the ability to restrict maps. So we'll show that right now. Restricting of maps, it's something in the privacy settings of Strava, as you can see here. There is, you can basically set this up. So you can choose to actually restrict down to a large area, or up to a couple of kilometers, or a small one. And what happens is that in this initial mode, you can basically select where you, like if you start or stop at a place, say like your house and that radius around it. If you start a session, then it will be only visible to you, but not to anyone else. And I think that's a great start, right? So you can actually say like up to n kilometers. Why not do that, right? And I think that works. But then imagine, you start your runs in different areas. If it's always kind of, you can see this area that kind of always sticks out from a radius. You might want to consider, well, okay, that's great. So, why is this particular radius? What's there? And now, if you've got an unusual name like mine, you can use things like the electoral roll, unfortunately, to find out people's addresses, or if they, for example, if you have your company, you own a company and you're registered through Company's House. You would have maybe put your home address on that, so people can find you from that. If they know the rough area you're in, then they can use that to leverage. If they know that you live in a city, I mean, I'll be honest, I've already doxed myself in this. People know I live in Brighton, but you can use Company's House to find out people's addresses. So if you do run a company, I would probably advise that you can't use PO Box numbers anymore to register a company, but you can create, hire an office. So I think in particular, I can't think of any brands at the moment, but you know what I mean. You the legitimate companies, you hire a separate office. It's about maybe 30-40 quid a month. Is that worth it? Well, it depends. Do you want people? Do you deal in something where you might put yourself forward? People might want to stalk you. In that case, I think it's absolutely worth it to spend 40 quid a month of a business expense to hide your personal address. Do you live with other vulnerable people? Do you live with children? 40 quid's nothing in that context. Do you live on your own? You're setting up for a night. You're not really that bothered if someone came to your door. 40 quid might not be worth it, but that's kind of what I'm saying about this. It's not for me. I would register a company if I had one. I would register the company with one of these offices, so that way that my home address would stay safe. Another thing that you can do around keeping your house safe is don't take photos of yourself on social media outside your front. Why the front door? Because front doors are generally very unique. You can tell a lot by the area, by the surround. If you might have a bit of a garden bit, you can tell by the plants that live there, maybe what part of the street you're in. If you go a bit further out, you can you might glimpse a road name, and then that's exactly, they've got your road name, right? And also, that's it. Front doors tend to be quite unique from property to property. You probably look down your road. It's very rare that every single one will be painted the same, being exactly the same. And even when they are kind of the same, you've got differences in the brickwork, etc. You can work out maybe where the rough area of your house is, and then again, if you've got if you've got a rare name or quite a unique name, then you're going to be found. I think like the other thing is, we don't really have a phone book these days. Going X directory was generally quite the main one of the old. I don't think that's really a problem anymore. But you might want to look. I did a talk a few years ago around this kind of OPSEC stuff because I had to do this a lot for some people that when I was DJing, we needed to keep where I lived a secret, right? And it was quite difficult. I think in those days it was going X directory, but I found from my talk 0n1ydan5, for example, used to, don't know if they still do, but they can some companies can keep a track of not necessarily your current address but where you've previously lived, which can be a bit weird, and people can then make connections of, okay, well that's your rough area that you live in. If you've always lived in the same city or same county, that's where you move to there. Maybe you move to that area. People are very determined if they want to find out this stuff. It's scary. So another issue that I've had, where this one wasn't an issue because it was quite a friendly one, but I used to do what's called an OPSEC session. So OPSEC is operational security, and this is very much what this stuff is. You're securing the operation. For what we're using it, this is personal security. So some people would say PERSEC. You're keeping your personal information secure is what the goal of this is. Now, what I used to do was say OPSEC challenges while I was running. I would take photos and post them to Instagram as a story. And then, I'd say, but I always thought they were quite safe because essentially I was taking photos of where there's nothing but a field. There's no distinguishing marks. There might be some at the beginning, but that's about it. And I'd challenge people to raise money to see where I was. And then some people would actually get that right. So they would, one of them was, I took a distinctive photo of a rainbow door, which was the Revenge nightclub. And somebody in the US managed to realise, okay, I lived in Brighton. That's a very distinctive door. Where is it? And they got that. That was fantastic. But one that kind of concerned me a little was when I was on a run. I'd taken some photos. I hadn't intended it to be this kind of OPSEC thing. I was just on a run, and someone decided to meet me in the middle of the Downs at 1 p.m. and surprise me. Now, I'll be honest, that experience, for them, they were just, hey, look, I found you, it's what you do. And I was like, yeah, it is. And it was very kind of calm, but at the same time, it did really concern me, because what if that was somebody that wasn't so kind? That was maybe a lot stronger than me, and I think that really freaked me out a little bit, because I hadn't intended to share my location that day. It just happened, and I thought I was being quite careful. The other previous photos they'd been just of trees, but apparently what they said was that I repeat that path quite frequently. So through my map, they could notice that maybe I was going to go down that road again. And that's the next part. People are very predictable. People are incredibly predictable. We might think of ourselves as incredibly unique, but we always follow a pattern. We will generally eat the same things. We will take the same routes to work. We will take the same routes home. We will generally watch the same things on television. Even when we've changed and found that really new, exciting thing, it's probably a rehash of something else we've watched because we just like those genres. With that in mind, your runs are going to be quite predictable unless you actively try and change the routes that you do, not just on a daily basis, but seeing, are you always taking the route along the beach on a Monday? Are you always going to the countryside on a Tuesday? When you do your breaks, are you always running on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday? You are, because it's a pattern, it's a routine. Most people do. Very rarely would you run on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and then change it to be Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then change it back and then randomise it. It's very rare people do that. But that is a fantastic strategy if you don't want people to find you. And again, that's a lot of effort, right? It's an incredibly large amount of effort because around 10% of England and Wales cannot stop harassing people. It's a lot of effort that people have to make because people can't stop harassing people. So, one thing that you can stop that from is actually in Strava. It's actually, you can actually choose not to share your map data at all. And I'll give you a little look at what that looks like, because that's actually now my setting. It wasn't before, but it has been quite recently. So I've decided to change that, because before that Strava had this option, but as I understood it, if you chose to not share your map, then you couldn't share your times and couldn't take part in challenges, which was I thought was a bit sucky. So I kept it for a while, but now I've noticed recently that they only like, if you turn off all map visibility, it's only for particular segments that you can't that you can't take part in. And if I'm honest, the kind of leader, the local hero leader bit, I'm not really that fussed about. So I have chosen to remove maps completely. And as you can see here in our free user, you can see my map there. It's very visible for me. We've looked at the person that's following me. They can't see it at all. They may be able to see older maps, but certainly from this point on, no more maps. So that solves that problem. But again, if you might value segments, and being the top of your local leadership board, if that's the case, then this won't be for you, and there's no answer, unfortunately, other than going through the steps of maybe randomizing your runs. What else we're going to talk about? So I guess that's it. So I think the main thing that you can do is do what's called OPSEC on yourself, PERSEC. Google yourself. Actually look to see what things you can find out about yourself, what things maybe type in your name and your current address, type in your name and do you do a job? You type in your name and your job. It might even come up with your LinkedIn stuff. How easily is it to find you? And just think, just more and more details. Just add to a Google search and just see, does something strange come up? Look at, if you own a company, look at Companies House. See what information you give away, and actually, are you happy for other people? If somebody was trying to find you, are you happy that they can't find you enough from that? Look at your details for your running apps. I'm using Strava because it's literally the one I use. There are a plethora of others, and they probably all have the same concerns. So do look up at your privacy settings. Think, do you really want to share the runs? Now, another weird thing is social media. If you're fundraising for, like I am for Refuge, I'm sure that you might be fundraising for other charities, or the same. One thing you need to do is probably be out there a little bit. So how do you combat that? I mean, for me, my first experience of this was I used to be a DJ at the same time, not wanting people to know I was a DJ because I was between 14 and 18 at this point and was worried that I'd lose my passion because I used to say I was over 18. Not a good thing. There's a talk on that as well later, which I'll link. But I think essentially what the problem is you need to put yourself out there a bit, but you don't necessarily want to put yourself out there. So, your front door, photographing that, please definitely avoid that if you can. If you've got a distinctive garden, that's the other thing. If you think people can look at a bird's eye view of a map in Google Maps, they can search out if they think that you've got this unique shed or, swimming pool or, these things kind of flag up. You've got a trampoline, or your garden just looks a bit weird, it's like an L shape or, all these things. If they have a rough idea of where you live, these are unique things. So that's like House on its own. Social media wise, you don't have to use your own name. You don't have to use you could use a fake name. You could use a fake information to populate that. Now, I think like this is a bit weird, controversial, because unfortunately some abusers and attackers use social media to attack people using fake names. It is for good and bad. There are things where in my past I've had to research things like look for missing people. Thanks, taking part in Trace Lab, Capture the Flags, where we look for real missing people. We don't want to be doing that in our own names. We don't want to necessarily have somebody find us and find out what our real names and who our friends are and who our family are, right, on Facebook, because you might be connected there. You might be connected on social media to real people that even if you are completely locked down, they might not be as security conscious as you, and then you may be making them vulnerable. But so that's the other thing to bear in mind. Maybe create a completely different account that's not really connected to your close friends and family, or you don't mention them. You keep an account private that is your family and your friends' account, and they can know all sorts and about you, and that's great. But then you have a public account that is just really used for the purposes of fundraising, or for your particular hobby exploits, or the things that you actually want people to have public knowledge about. Create accounts for that and keep them very separate. Don't accept on the private account. You don't have to accept any requests. Just in passing, you might have spoken to someone incredibly charming in passing, but you owe them nothing. If they accept you in a private account, you don't have to accept it. So I guess that's it really. It's kind of just watching, just looking out for what you share. Not, another one is, just being careful in photos, like things like street names. Thinking about, if you wear, not so much now because it's coming up for winter, but in the summer, spring, bright sunlight, you might want to wear sunglasses. If you're opposite a sign, you might have, especially like I've got reflective ones. It'll literally show up a street name in the eye. You can zoom in very clear. A lot of cameras these days are incredibly high density, 1080p, 4K, 8K. They will pick up these little details, and then if someone's determined enough, they can just zoom in that. I'm not giving anything away. These are all techniques that are well known by criminals, by abusers. They are used. I know that because I've watched talks that shared this information, and it's pretty much public knowledge. So I think that's around it. Don't let any of this put you off as well. I think from my own experience, I chose that day not to hide away. I think it's very difficult when you first go through that, because all you want to do, I don't know whether it is the same for other experiences, but certainly in my own, I felt that something had been taken away from me, and I didn't want to go out for a while. I was scared that it was just going to happen again. With that in mind, I also then made the decision that I can't live in fear for my whole life. And I guess going out again was incredibly tough. I think it helped that my job was being a DJ. I had to go out to make money, so you had to deal with it, right? At the same time, I think I wasn't necessarily, in my kind of promoting myself way that I would have been before that. So I think though, going forward, going now, I don't stop doing things because something might happen. I refuse to let that happen. And I think, if you can do that, great. If you don't want to do that, that's also not a judgment call on this whatsoever. It's you've got to do what is right for you. But I would say anyone that is concerned that they might have given away too much information, run that marathon. Keep doing this, because fundamentally, they're not going to know where you are now. In a marathon, they are going to, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people alongside you. They are not going to get to you, not easily. So I think, keep going, keep smiling, and and just this is just to give some advice if you need it. If also if you're doing great right now, feel free to ignore. Okay, that's it. Thanks a lot for listening. Don't forget, if you like what you've seen here, we are raising money for Refuge. Just £52 will help a family leave domestic violence by setting them up for a night. So yeah, if you can, please give generously. Thanks. I'll be raising money from now until April. Just head to dancon.dev, where there will be a link to the Only Dan's Just Giving page, or alternatively, you can, if this is pretty much every social media I've got has got a link to the Just Giving page, or if feel free to DM and I'll send you a link to it. Okay, thanks a lot. See you.